All right, well, good afternoon. Thank you all for joining AgeWell's Navigating Eldercare webinar. We have an excellent panel today to discuss self-care tips for caregivers. Next slide. We are incredibly fortunate to have the Greater Nashville Regional Council Area Agency on Aging and Disability as a partner, not only for this webinar, but also for our elder care coach phone consultations, which we'll talk a little bit more about in the presentation. In just a moment, John and Neil will share more about the resources that GNRC offers. But we've also got three outstanding panelists, Cheryl, Caroline, and Vicki, who will share their expert insights on how to take care of yourself while you're caregiving. We'll talk a little bit about AgeWell Middle Tennessee and the Eldercare Coach program and the role that we play in providing support for aging adults and family caregivers. And we hope you will have some questions. So please type your questions in the chat and we'll have time at the end to answer those questions. So let me tell you just a little bit about AgeWell Middle Tennessee, if you're not familiar with us. We are a nonprofit organization founded 36 years ago to be a trusted resource and champion for older adults and family caregivers. As a local and unbiased nonprofit, AgeWell offers a variety of educational resources, such as our directory of services, caregiving guidebooks, the helpline, and the rubric care navigation tool. These are all designed to help older adults and family caregivers plan, find assistance, and navigate care options. Thanks to sponsors and grants, these trusted print and online resources are free to older adults and caregivers in Middle Tennessee. So it's really common to feel alone when you're caregiving. It's a big job. However, we do know that there are 42 million Americans now providing care to elder loved ones. The baby boomer generation is a big generation. There's a lot of people born in those years, and they're all aging. So caregivers are comprised of 61% women and 39% men. And the majority of caregivers work full or part-time. And studies show that caregiving can have serious economic impacts on earning potential, particularly for women, as they may need to reduce their work hours or sometimes leave the workforce entirely. So as the population is aging, we're finding that caregiving is affecting more and more people, and statistics show it touches all generations. 34% of caregivers are baby boomers. 29% of caregivers were born in the mid-60s to early 1980s. These are the Gen X. Millennials, who were those born between 1981 and 1996, account for 23% of caregivers. And another 7% of caregivers, these are super young caregivers, were born after 1997, the Gen Zers. So next slide. As I mentioned previously, we are really pleased to have a partnership with Greater Nashville Regional Council and the Family Caregiver Support Program. Jonna Neal is here to tell us more about the program, but first, let me tell you a little bit about Jonna. Jonna is a licensed social worker and lead role for the Family Caregiver Support Program with Greater Nashville Regional Council. She's native to Nashville, Tennessee. She graduated from the University of Tennessee with a master's degree in social work. She's been with Greater Nashville Regional Council for 6 years and loves getting to work with caregivers and assisting older adults. Jonna, thanks so much for being here, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. And I love getting to continue to work with AgeWell and even our partnership with the Eldercare Coach. So I'll go ahead and jump in. I do want to kind of talk about just Greater Nashville Regional Council as a whole, because we do aging departments, just one part of it. So GNRC is designed by the state of Tennessee as the state development district for 13 counties in Middle Tennessee. So development districts were created by the Tennessee General Assembly in order to provide the mechanism for regional cooperation and technical support for planning and economic development initiatives. The council is made up of mayors, county executives, and appointed community members to represent business and minority interests. So our scope of work is defined by the agency's formal designations. So GNRC is designated by the U.S. Economic Development Administration to serve as the region's economic development district. We also serve as the administrator of the federally mandated Metropolitan Planning Organization, the MPO, for the Nashville area, fulfilling required regional transportation planning and coordination of infrastructure investments. And GNRC is designated by the Tennessee Commission on Aging and Disability as the area agency on aging and disability, the AAAD, to provide care, transportation, nutrition, and other services to older or physically disabled Middle Tennesseans. So it's kind of a lot overall that GNRC does. And then in these roles, you know, GNRC convenes to elected leadership and local practitioners to brainstorm strategies for improving quality of life, facilitate cooperative policymaking in order to prioritize state and federal investments into area of social services and public infrastructure, and provide a public forum of Middle Tennesseans to shape regional decisions. So specifically, next slide, for the aging and disability services. So we do have the primary purpose of the aging and disability service is to coordinate the delivery of services and programs to promote an environment conducive to enhancing the quality of life of the region's older population. We offer a direct connection to services through our information and assistance helpline, and then also provide external referrals to partner agencies, like with AgeWell and our Eldercare coach consultations. So after that whole overview, I am here to talk about the specific program for caregivers. So next slide. The Family Caregiver Support Program, and that is to provide respite support, education to families, just dealing with the unique stress and challenges caring for loved ones. We provide respite care to temporarily relieve caregivers from their responsibilities, supplemental services to complement caregiver efforts, and education on neurological conditions, including Alzheimer's and dementia, and also connection to support groups and counseling services. But the two main types of programs that we do with the Family Caregiver Support Program is our voucher reimbursement and then our Take a Break program. So next slide. I do want to talk about really quick before I go into those two programs, who qualifies, who's eligible for our Family Caregiver Support Program service. So it can be an adult member or other adult providing informal care to someone 60 years or older. It can be an adult family member or other adult providing informal care to individuals of any age with Alzheimer's disease or related disorder. It can be a caregiver 55 years or older providing care to an adult 18 to 59 with disabilities. And then we also do have a grandparent relative caregiver program, and it's someone that's 55 years or older providing care to children under the age of 18, and that can include our before and after care, tutoring, and also summer camps for that grandparent relative caregiver program. So thank you. The voucher reimbursement program. This is offering a reimbursement for up to $200 a month for an informal provider. So someone that the caregiver is self-hiring. We do run a background check that takes about 24 hours to receive results, mostly just for elder abuse or any kind of assault. But it's independent because the caregiver, like I said, is hiring someone just for, you know, it can be like a church friend, it can be a friend's niece, but 18 or older, and the caregiver can choose the schedule and the rate. And that $200 a month is the federal line set by the IRS to not have to claim as an income. So I did kind of want to touch base on, you know, when you are kind of having someone help, it could be in-home personal care or homemaking, you know, service for that person, but it is ultimately the caregiver is hiring, picking that person. So we can do a voucher program. A lot of caregivers are private paying a company to come in, and we can reimburse also. And it is a bigger reimbursement than $200. And that's because when a agency is involved, they do a W-2 and hiring taxes. So they're claiming it as an income. So we basically, because this is a state funded program, we do have a state authorized budget. So it's pretty much just staying within that. But there is the voucher reimbursement program that can be through an informal, private hire, or if you're even paying an agency. So next slide. Then we also have the second part of our program is the take a break part. This is where we do GNRC contracts with agencies across our 13 counties that can provide that in-home service, that personal care respite, homemaking respite, and just in-home respite. We are partnered, with these agencies where we partner out where they're providing the in-home care. As of right now, I'm sure everyone's aware there is a pretty big labor shortage. So it is kind of difficult right now. A lot of people are short-staffed within providing those workers to come in the home, but it is something that we can provide and authorize a few hours a week for that in-home service for the caregiver to take that break from their usual responsibilities. Another way that we can do the Take a Break program is through our adult day center. We do contract with adult day centers, like I said, a few facilities throughout our 13 counties. And it's kind of nice because the caregiver and the care receiver both get a break. So the care receiver, we can authorize up to 104 days a year of that adult day center. So, and it can be up to 8 hours a day. So it really is something that we it's beneficial for both. So that's always another way we can do our take a break. So next slide, how to apply is you can call our information and assistance helpline, which is the 255-1010. They're really knowledgeable and kind of helpful with all the programs and services we provide. And they do an over the phone assessment and intake, and you kind of have that telephone conversation, and they can help provide which route of our services through GNRC is best, whether it's our family caregiver program, and then also if you're kind of looking for voucher reimbursement, or if you're needing the respite, or if adult day center is something that you're needing. So calling that number, and then the next slide is my contact information. Please reach out with any questions, even just to get started, or if have a scenario. So that's what we offer, and that's all for me.
Great. Thank you so much, Jonna. So if you have any questions for Jonna, go ahead and put those in the chat, and we will get to those at the end of the presentation. And of course, her contact information is there as well. Well, next, I am happy to introduce Cheryl Blanchard. Cheryl is the Middle Tennessee Regional Director for Alzheimer's Tennessee. She is a licensed social worker, certified dementia care specialist, and a certified case manager. She has worked with seniors throughout Tennessee for several years in a variety of roles, and has focused most of her training on caring for those with Alzheimer's disease and for their families. So Cheryl, thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me again. It's always a pleasure to be here with AgeWell and share this information with you all. So I'm just going to share my screen now. And I just want to talk to all of the caregivers that have joined today about how they can take care of themselves and hopefully prevent caregiver stress. It's one thing to address it when it's there, but it's great if we can just prevent it in the first place. So I'm going to be sharing with you 5 tips that I share with families to help avoid caregiver stress. And those involve managing expectations, making plans in advance, establishing limits. We're going to talk about promises, and then most importantly, recognizing that we really do need to ask for and accept help. So when I say developing realistic expectations, as it turns out in our lives, oftentimes the stress we experience is caused more by our expectations not being met than the reality of the situation itself. We often expect things to be differently. And it's hard when it's a family member, maybe they have a an advanced college degree, or they ran a company, it's very hard for us to look at that person and recognize that they may no longer be able to drive or write a check, manage their finances, or even tie their own shoes. So we make things harder on ourselves by expecting them to be able to do all the same things they were able to do before the diagnosis. Since the person with Alzheimer's disease cannot change and the reality can't change, it's us that needs to change. Really have to change our expectations for that person. Something as simple as tying a shoe. We've all been tying our shoes since we were maybe 5 or 6 years old. But when we develop Alzheimer's or another form of dementia, there are several challenges to doing something that the rest of us would consider very simple. And a lot of these start with the letter A. So we call these the 5 A's of Alzheimer's disease. The first is aphasia. That impacts our ability to understand language, to understand words. So when you tell someone to tie their shoes, they may not even be able to process the words that you're speaking to them. With amnesia, we know that that's just basic forgetfulness. So if you ask someone to get their shoes on and then you leave to go do something else and come back, you may find that they've completely forgotten that you even made that request. Agnosia is a condition where you're not able to recognize common objects or understand what they're used for. So you may say, put your shoes on, and the person with Alzheimer's may be looking around and not being quite sure what a shoe is, or may even be looking directly at their shoes and not even recognize that that's what you were talking about, or that this is an item that goes on their foot. Apraxia impacts the ability of the brain and the muscles to communicate. So this is why people with advanced dementia have difficulty tying shoes, buttoning up a shirt, and even in later stages of Alzheimer's, we'll notice they have difficulty walking because just putting one foot in front of the other takes too much skill. And then with anomia, the person is not even able to find the words to ask you what it was you asked them to do, or what do you mean, or where are my shoes? So all of those things come along with Alzheimer's disease and can really impact the person's ability to do even the simplest of tasks. Another thing that's really important is making plans in advance. We often get into a crisis situation and then we're trying to figure out what do we need to do and who do we need to call, or you start looking for paperwork. And oftentimes, unfortunately, it's too late at that point, especially when it comes to things like powers of attorney. So you want to think about things, people, even who do you know, making a list of people that you know that you would call in certain situations, like, who do I know that would drive for me if I have an emergency and need to run to the hospital? Is there somebody that might come to the doctor with me and help me understand all the medical terminology they're speaking, or help me remember to ask the questions I want to ask? Make a list of people who have offered to stay with your loved one while you can get out. And when you need your own doctor's appointments or even just a haircut, call on those folks. But it's hard to remember who they are when you're in a crisis situation. So I'm really encouraging you to make a list and write it down. Who are the people that have offered to run errands for you, pick things up at the grocery store? Who do you know for certain that would come in an emergency? And then really, who are those people that will listen to you without judging? If you're a family caregiver, you probably already experienced people having opinions, but oftentimes the people with the strongest opinions have zero experience caring for someone with Alzheimer's disease or related dementia. So you want to find those people who will just listen to you, even if you're having a really bad day, and not judge you for the things that you say or the things that you're feeling. And then find those people who can relate to where you are. You've already heard other folks mention support services, support groups. Certainly, I encourage you to join an Alzheimer's support group. We have several of those through Alzheimer's Tennessee, and you can locate those on our website. The other thing about making plans in advance is just knowing what resources are available. And you've already heard AgeWell of Middle Tennessee and the Greater Nashville Regional Council talk about being just a wealth of knowledge of resources. Alzheimer's Tennessee is here for you as well. So if you're not even sure what the first step is or where to get started, please reach out to one of us. We're happy to get you going in the right direction. Know your insurance benefits and your loved one's insurance benefits. Daily, weekly, we hear from families who think their insurance is going to pay for non-medical care. It does not. They think their insurance is going to pay for assisted living or memory care, and it does not. So it's very important to know what those benefits are going to cover and what they don't cover. So as you're thinking about long-term planning for your loved one, you know what you've got to work with. Check out your own benefits if you're still employed. What does your family medical leave look like? How can you use your sick leave or vacation days if you need to take off to care for your loved one? What are the transportation resources? Maybe your loved one is going to have a doctor's appointment on a day you absolutely cannot get there. So know what those resources are in the community that can pick them up and drive them to the doctor. Go ahead and look into caregiving agencies, get a feel for which one you might like, which one feels best to you. Do they have a 4-hour commitment that you have to make, or are there some that'll come out to your house just to help you for a couple of hours? That's important to know when you start looking for bringing caregivers into the home. What are the respite programs or the adult day programs in your area? Go ahead and have that information ready to go. And in the event that you need that, you already would have kind of done the legwork on that. Locating those support groups, like I mentioned, and then definitely early on, as soon as you know there may be a diagnosis of Alzheimer's or dementia, please look into the legal paperwork, like advance directives and powers of attorney. Many families wait until the dementia is very advanced, and then they decide they need power of attorney over their loved one, and it's too late. The legal system just will not let someone give that power over if they don't think they're competent. So definitely getting all of those things done well in advance. Another important step in taking care of yourself is establishing your limits. Is there something you know for certain you cannot handle? Is there something you know that you just don't want to be responsible for? And oftentimes for daughters, if they're taking care of their fathers, that line in the sand is kind of, I'll take care of my dad as long as I can. But when it gets to him needing assistance with toileting, he would not like that. I'm not comfortable with that. That's when I know I'm going to need help. And you can even have conversations with your loved ones in advance. Is there something, or is there a point that we might reach where you would not want me doing a certain thing for you, where you would not want me being your caregiver? And if you make those decisions in advance, and it becomes very easy to reach out for help when you get there because you've already decided it. You don't feel like you're abandoning your loved one or making a decision in a crisis. This is a decision you made way in advance, possibly years ago. So it's just time to take that next step. Another thing that gets us in a lot of trouble as caregivers is making promises that we just may not be able to keep. And one of the biggest promises is when your loved one is saying, I don't ever want to leave my home. Don't make me leave home. Don't ever put me in a nursing home. And we promise, Mom, I'll never do that to you. But sometimes we don't know what the future is going to hold. And we get into a situation where their care is way more than we can handle, but we made that promise. And so there's all this guilt and all this stress that goes along with it. So I'm going to encourage you to make a promise that you can keep. And that is, I promise I will do everything in my power to give you the very best care and the very best quality of life possible. And that leaves it open for you to decide that you do need help, that it is a bigger job than you can handle, that maybe bringing in some caregivers in the home is the right thing. Maybe an adult day program is the right thing, or maybe an assisted living or memory care is the right thing. But as long as your promise is that you're always going to provide the very best care that you possibly can, there's so many things that you can do that are still going to help you honor that promise. So just be aware that you don't paint yourself into the corner by making promises that 5 years from now, 8 years from now, you just may not be able to keep. Not that you don't want to, you just can't. And then lastly is asking for and accepting help. So 2 very important things I want caregivers to know. One is how to nod your head up and down like this little guy normally does and say, yes, please. Oftentimes we're our worst enemies. People say, is there anything you need? Can I help you? What can I do for you? And we say, nope, I'm fine. I don't need anything.
Looks like Cheryl may have had a technical issue. Let's see if she comes back. Okay. Do you want to go to the next slide? I think it's probably her contact information. You're muted, Cheryl. Okay, Rochelle, do you want to take back the presentation? Okay, can you guys hear me? Okay. All right. Okay, Cheryl, you want to go ahead, finish up your slide? Sorry, Cheryl, okay. You're muted and maybe we've lost you. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in. This is Cheryl's contact information when she gets back online. Can you hear us okay, Cheryl? Do you want to finish up your slide? Okay. Okay. Rochelle, would you like to advance to the next slide?
Yeah, and I got kicked off. I don't know if you guys heard any of that, but I was totally
Okay.
locked out, so I couldn't do any. I could hear you, but I think you couldn't hear.
No.
Tennessee regional offices, and let me see if I can. Yeah, I think you should be able to get rid of that now, Rochelle.
Okay, sorry about that little technical issue there. Cheryl, we always appreciate the information that you bring to the webinars because those are such important things to be aware of. So thank you so much for that. Up next, we have Caroline Chamberlain. Carol holds an MS degree in social work and is a longtime AgeWell board member. She had a 35-year career at the Metropolitan Social Services Department of Nashville, Davidson County, where she served in various capacities, including work with children, adolescents, and older adults, serving as the director of the assisted living facility for over 12 years. Caroline was an elder caregiver for 13 years, caring for her mom and her in-laws. So Caroline, thank you so much for joining us and being willing to share your experience and the tips that you have on caregiving.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, and I'm really glad to be able to be here and share with you today to a topic that's really close to my heart. As Nola said, I was a caregiver for 13 years, and the journey began with transportation, shopping, medication management, and progressed into learning how to manage major medical issues, which included care of my mother's ostomy bag and feeding tube. I began to feel like I really had a medical degree at the end of it. 6 of the 13 years were with my mother, and that included 1 year prior to my retirement. And the other 7 years were with my mother and father-in-law. My mother's issues were medical in nature, and we were able to keep her at home with the help of hospice until her death. My mother-in-law had the added issue of dementia the last few years of her life, and she lived in assisted living the last 2 years. This was a better fit for her and meeting her needs. Caring for someone with dementia takes an extra measure of patience and learning new communication skills. As heavy as caregiving can be, there are some positive and meaningful special relationships that are built and great memories to be cherished. It's really a labor of love and of hope. Caregiving is really a journey. It's not static. It changes as caregiving intensifies. It's personal, it has a life of its own. However, there are some common threads that run through all caregiving situations, and the AgeWell Guidebook is a great resource for these common themes. The guidebook is a treasure book of information. It was developed by professionals from a variety of disciplines, as well as having caregivers with their personal experience to be sure that they blended together. There are 11 chapters in the book, ranging from planning ahead to end-of-life issues. Each chapter is valuable, has valuable information, and they don't have to be read in order. They each stand alone because every person jumps into caregiving at their own place and having different questions that need to be answered. I wanted to touch on 5 of the chapters that really cut across all kinds of caregiving, regardless of how it looks for you, because if you know things ahead of time, it's going to be much easier when they arise. than being hit. As Cheryl said, all of a sudden you're hit with it and you don't have any prior thoughts at all. First is planning and organizing ahead of time. It talks about family planning. It's really important to plan as a family if at all possible. It'll be make your journey easier. And families have all sorts of different ideas and thoughts. So if you can plan together, that's wonderful. Negotiating the healthcare system. It talks about various levels of care and how to prepare for those levels and have an understanding of what may lie ahead. The chapter on financial, legal, and medical information, it's going to provide you the financial information that you need to have ahead of time and the necessary legal documents, the powers of attorney, and all that's going to be necessary for you to have at your fingertips just out of the blue. It covers what Medicare covers and what it doesn't cover. Again, you need to know because Medicare doesn't cover everything, and you need to want to know ahead of time what kind of backup plan you're going to need. End of life issues is good for everybody to look at. It's a difficult chapter, but it's eventually everybody's going to face it. So to have a little bit of thought about that ahead of time will be helpful. And then respite. Self-care is an absolute must. Caregiving has so many emotional and physical components for the caregiver, which necessitates some kind of respite care. This is the chapter for you, the caregiver. It's a life support for all caregivers. So what is respite? Respite is it's a relief for the caregiver, but it's a needed and deserved service and supports family well-being. Caregiving is a family event. It's not just one person, but it involves the whole family. It's a temporary break for the caregiver. It can be a planned break for a doctor's appointment or opportunity to do something for yourself or your family. It could be an emergency break. Maybe you have to attend a funeral or some other event that comes up on the spur of the moment. Respite can happen in several places. It could happen in your own home with someone coming in to give you a break. It could happen in another setting like an adult daycare service. It can even happen in a residential program where your loved one can stay overnight or for a few days, so you and your family can go on a vacation and just spend some time away. My own personal experience, my self-care needs grew as my caregiving journey intensified. Some of the things that I personally found most helpful, one was training by professionals as I began to care for my mother's medical issues, bringing her home from the hospital. I got training at the hospital and also from the home health care agency. If they provided me a place I could go for questions as I was by myself, and I did learn how to ask questions. They were very helpful. Having another caregiver to talk to, somebody who is currently caregiving or somebody who's been there, just to be able to share your feelings and your experience and not feel like that you're facing something that nobody else has. It keeps you from being isolated and alone. I got great support from my mother's medical team. I had to learn how to be more assertive and ask questions and not feel like any of them was stupid. I learned how to bring in information, things that I observed at home that the doctors could know about and help them in their care planning. And they made me a part of the team. They listened to me and supported me, and it was very helpful to me to know they were there. And then there's self-care. I finally realized and accepted that if I didn't take care of myself, I couldn't take care of my mother. Somehow we think we're able to do everything by ourselves and it's going to work. So my first step in this was getting some respite. It came in a variety of forms for me. One was my brother. He lived out of town and he would call my mother every day and just be that emotional support. And he would come once a month to give me a break and do heavy cleaning, It was an opportunity for him and my mother and me to sit down and just look at issues, hear her concerns, and talk together as a family. And I realized that I couldn't do full-time 7 days a week without any break. So my mother and I discussed it, and we brought in a part-time caregiver for 2 days a week for a few hours each day to help me with that care and to give me a break. And I had a friend that would occasionally come in and stay with my mother so that I could go to a doctor's appointment or go shopping or just have a few hours to myself. A big thing was I had to learn to not feel guilty over not being able to do it all by myself. Somehow we carry around this guilt. So you need to learn to not feel guilty. The second step was being able to stay involved in some activities. I had to make choices. I couldn't stay involved with everything. So I chose a few things that were most helpful to me. And what I chose was staying in my water aerobics class, which helped me to stay more healthy and socializing and was good. I also stayed involved with my church and the activities. It gave me another source of support and outside events. And then I stayed involved with AgeWell board and various committees. Those relationships were an amazing support. So again, it's that outside support you're getting from a variety of places. And then I found written resources as issues come up or questions come up. You need those trusted resources to go to, such as the AgeWell guidebook, the directory of services, several of them that Cheryl mentioned. So there are resources, written resources there. And then I wanted to touch on the grief process. It's not uncommon to go through a grief process while you're in the middle of caregiving. If you're involved with it for a long time, you find yourself grieving the relationships you've had and the decline of your loved one. And just don't be blindsided. I would get out to my car in the afternoon to go home and be crying, and I couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And I finally discovered I was in the midst of grief. And then I was able to do some reading and get some help. So do some reading and understand what the grief process is. But however, with all of its difficulties, caregiving has certainly enriched my life in so many ways, including helping me prepare for my own future as an aging adult, which is where I find myself right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. It's so critical to hear from someone who has been through the whole process. So thank you for being willing to share your story. Well, finally, our last but certainly not least panelist is Vicki Harris. Vicki has committed her professional career to service delivery to older and disabled adults across the post-acute and long-term service and support continuum. She has served as a nursing home administrator, director of the Vanderbilt University Medical Center hospital-based skilled unit, market vice president for a care management company, and executive director of Leading Age Tennessee. She operates QEC Partners, a consulting firm focused on quality improvement in long-term services and support organizations. And she's the founder of Community Connexor, a new business focused on making access to needed basic services and navigation of the maze of organizations easier for older adults and their families. Vicki's professional journey has merged with the personal one, in which she provides supportive services to aging parents, a role she endearingly refers to as likely the second most important one she will have. Vicki serves on the board of several senior service provider organizations, including AgeWell Middle Tennessee. So Vicki, thank you so much for taking time to be here with us today.
Well, thank you for inviting me. And unlike Caroline, I am still in the midst of the process, a journey, as she referred to it, that started in 2016, that now involves both of my parents. Yes, it's a labor of love, but it is also a destination that is predictable, and it's an undesired destination that you are journeying toward, which does cause that depression. it is also a journey that I must say has, oh my God, a great deal of unpredictability associated with it. And that's where the stressors come from. And as Nola was going over my background, one would think that I would be very well prepared to manage all of this, but I was ill prepared. And so I had to actually work through a process of figuring out that it is a role, because otherwise it had become all-consuming in my life. As a daughter, I am one of 2 children, and I live in Murfreesboro, and my parents live 50 miles away in rural southern Middle Tennessee in Lewisburg. And so there's this windshield time associated with this. And so I had to come to the next slide, please. I had to come to the recognition that as a family caregiver, that I was a person. That it was important for me to maintain some visibility of who I was and what my kind of life had been, and I still had these visions of things I wanted to do in the future, and maintain a connection with the community and seek out those supports for continued connectivity. And so recognizing that you as a family caregiver are important. In fact, you almost become the center of the relationship when you think about it. Next slide. So in that process, and I had to journey through this for about 12 to 18 months with my parents starting in 2016, is that it was a role because it had become all-consuming. And so as you look at it and it's a role, then you kind of separate yourself out and you can recognize that I'm important. And then your loved ones are certainly important. And so I concluded that that role has kind of 3 major categories associated with it. Some relativity factors, the dynamics of it, and the intersectionality. Next slide. So relativity factors. So aging and caregiving is unique to each individual and to each family unit. And so some of the relativity factors you see here: income, age, geography. I mentioned the fact that I have an hour's drive to get to my parents, their physical and mental state, your physical and mental state, as well as that of other family members. So this is I'm have a business background. So this is almost like a stakeholder assessment. So everybody that's involved, all of these factors come into play. You are, as part of that recognition that it's a role, is the fact that this is dynamic. Nothing is going to be the same for any extended period of time. And so therefore, recognizing that based on health status and relationships, financial resources, that there's going to be this ever-changing role. And then the fact that that caregiver role actually impacts everything in your life. So it impacts your job, your career, your hobbies. It impacts the relationships with your other family members. So that's what I came to recognize. Next slide. So for me, that's about 24 to 30 hours a week, okay? And remember, I live in Murfreesboro. Parents live 50 miles away in rural Tennessee, and I am in Nashville usually two to 3 days a week with my work. So thank God for technology, okay, is what I like to say, because I don't see how I would be able to manage without technology. I also leverage my brother. We've split our parents in half as far as who's the lead. Of course, as the female, I get the burden of the cooking and most of the chores that fall to females most of the time, but he gets the lawn mowing and all of the other. And so next slide, please. So my management plan is flexibility, leveraging my brother and recognizing that this is a journey whose course is unpredictable, and that I just need to be prepared to do the balancing act and not get too regimented, and roll with it and enjoy the opportunity to serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicki. You are a busy lady, so we really appreciate you being with us today and sharing what you've learned through your journey, both professionally and personally. So thank you so much. All right, so we'll go to the next slide. What is Elder Care Coach? So AgeWell, one of our core responsibilities or challenges or charges is to recognize gaps that exist. So we did recognize, and I wasn't with AgeWell at the time, this has been in the works for about 5 years, recognize that there is a need for caregiver support. You've heard a lot today, but AgeWell developed the Elder Care Coach program. The program brings together a variety of resources into a single source of information. As the panelists have said, this is a journey. So along the way, you're going to need different information. What you need at the beginning of your journey is going to be different in the middle, and then as you near the end. So we do bring everything together. This saves you time trying to do all this research on your own. The Elder Care Coach program provides personalized support and care navigation assistance, expert guidance, and trusted, unbiased information. So next slide. So AgeWell has resources that are available to the general public, and we also have resources that we've developed for the Elder Care Coach program. So what's been in existence is our helpline. We have the rubric tool, which you can access on the AgeWell website or the Elder Care Coach. This is a quick survey. It takes about 4 to 5 minutes. It just kind of helps you navigate through what are some of the tools that you might need. We do have the guidebooks like Caroline mentioned in our directory of services. But through the Elder Care Coach program, we're able to provide individualized 30-minute phone or chat, if you prefer that method of communication, consultations with a geriatric specialist. The consultations are designed, again, to save you time, to help identify resources that are most helpful for your specific situation. The Elder Care Coach program also provides an online portal, lunch and learn webinars, and employer best practices. And the goal of that is to help employers learn how to be more caregiver friendly. So next slide. To access all of these tools, just log on to eldercarecoach.org. So everyone is welcome to visit that site. And this is where you can find all of those resources that we've talked about. You can watch our new Elder Care Coach video series, and you can schedule your complimentary 30-minute phone consultation or chat. So as I mentioned, our partnership with the Greater Nashville Regional Council helps provide these consultations at no cost to caregivers. So don't hesitate to take advantage of that. And as I mentioned, you can do that no matter where you are in your journey. Sometimes we have callers who just need confirmation that they're doing the right thing. And again, the consultations are provided by a geriatric care professional who can answer the questions that are specific to your situation and provide guidance and resources that you need. So again, just to schedule your phone consultation, you start by logging into eldercarecoach.org. And if you're unable to register online, I did put our helpline phone number there on that slide. Feel free to give us a call. You will need to complete a confidential intake form, and this provides the geriatric specialist with information about you, the caregiver, and information about the person that is receiving care. And this helps the coach prepare appropriate information and resources prior to the scheduled call. So no time is kind of wasted setting a baseline of what your situation is. You've completed that intake form. She's done her research. So then you pick a date and time that works for you, and then just be ready to receive the call at your scheduled time. The Eldercare Coach phone consultations are excellent resources. Here you can see some of the testimonials of previous callers. I encourage you to take advantage of it. There's no charge. Call as many times as you need. And again, I'll just say that, our partnership with GNRC helps provide this service to caregivers at no cost. So, don't hesitate to go ahead and schedule that consultation. Okay, so you've gotten a lot of information today. We would like to queue up some poll questions. So if you take a couple of minutes to answer these questions. Do you want to start the poll, Rochelle? There we go. So we'll just let you do that for a few minutes. Rochelle, you tell me when you're ready to close. For question number 4, you can put any longer responses in the chat if you'd like. And again, don't forget, you can put your questions there as well. We do have some time to answer questions. Give it another few seconds to finalize that poll whenever you're ready, Rochelle. All right. Okay, well, thank you for taking time to do that poll. That really helps us provide the service and change our webinars if we need to. All right, I do not see any questions in the chat. Cheryl, I know we've got a couple of minutes and I know you didn't get a chance to do your last slide. Do you want to conclude your presentation? You want to take another couple of minutes?
Yeah, it was really just the last slide was, so if Rochelle real quick, the very last one just showed that we are a state, whether you're here in the Nashville area or you have a loved one in a different part of the state, we do have regional offices all over to support you wherever you are. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you, Cheryl. Okay. So we did have one question. Will the slides in the presentation be available to the participants? And yes, we are recording this webinar, and we have a page on the AgeWell website where we will file this recording, and you can watch this recording or any previous webinars on our website at agewelltn.org. Did I get that right? Okay, well, that does conclude our webinar. So thank you for joining us, and I hope the information that we presented today helps you in your caregiving journey. Thank you, Jonna and Cheryl and Caroline and Vicki, for your time and for sharing your expertise. And please reach out to AgeWell if you have any questions or need additional information, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.